Desert Treasure 2 is finally set to release this week on July 26th, and if you haven't been fully involved in all of the new additions and slight changes to some of the rewards, hopefully this video does a good job of being a quick summary of that. But without further ado, the first thing you're going to need to know about Desert Treasure 2 is the requirements, and rather than reading off all of these individually, they have already actually added Desert Treasure 2 to the quest log in-game. So go ahead and pull up your quest tab and click on it, and it'll let you know any of the stuff you haven't completed already on your account. But apart from the requirements and the rewards we'll touch on in a minute, a majority of what the quest is and what we know about it is entirely a secret. The info we already know is the quest will follow a similar path to Desert Treasure 1, meaning there will be 4 gems being the Shadow, Ice, Smoke, and Blood gems. And with that, each of those gems will have their own unique area alongside a unique boss. These 4 bosses being the Whisperer, Dukes of Celis, the Leviathan, and then finally Vardorvis. And originally that is essentially all we knew about the quest in its entirety until the most recent livestream this last week, where Mod Arcane revealed just a little bit more information. For starters, you should expect to spend roughly 6+ hours on this quest if you're doing it on release. Obviously, this entirely depends on your gear, your skill level, and how good you are at puzzles. But he said for a majority of players, this is realistically an all-day quest. Similar to all of the Grandmaster quests in Old School, you can expect multiple different puzzles, a few demi-bosses even outside of the 4 main bosses we're going to see, not to mention all the running and navigating through the new areas of the map. Obviously, we'll have to see what awaits us on release day, but he also mentioned he expects it to be roughly a 3-hour quest even after there are guides. But now with the general info out of the way, let's talk about the 4 bosses specifically. Now this aspect of the quest is incredibly tight-knit, and we're essentially going in blind, knowing absolutely nothing about any of the fights. But apart from that, we did get a little bit more information that we didn't have prior, and some of the info they did release about the bosses that we didn't know prior was that they are going to have God Wars Dungeon style drop tables. Meaning rather than bringing in something like a Vorkath or a Muspah where you're averaging a solid 2 to 3 mil an hour off just everyday basic drops, these drop tables and how much money you're going to be making is going to be entirely geared on getting the rare drops, being either the Virtus, the Axe pieces, or any of the rings. And apart from the loot tables, the other thing they mentioned was that the kill times would be in comparison to that of Vorkath, so I'd assume probably in the range of the 2 to 3 minute mark. He also said there wasn't specifically a one-hit mechanic for any of the bosses, but if you did happen to do the mechanics wrong, they were incredibly hard-hitting. But now with the subtle hints of the new information out of the way, let's go ahead and jump to the most important aspect of the quest, and that's the rewards. First off, with the completion of the quest, you get the Ring of Shadows, which is essentially just a free upgrade to the Ring of Invisibility. This ring is untradeable and free to re-obtain with some pretty solid basic stats across the board. But apart from its basic stats, the ring will also serve as the fastest way to get to each boss once you unlock their respective boss teleport. Moving on to the 4 more important rings, we have the Altor, the Magus, the Bellator, and the Venator. The Altor being the direct upgrade to the B ring with a plus 12 melee strength bonus. The Magus being the upgrade to the Seers with a plus 15 accuracy and 2% magic damage. The Bellator is the upgrade to the Warrior Ring, rocking a plus 20 slash accuracy and plus 6 melee strength. And then finally the Venator with a plus 10 for the range accuracy and plus 2 range strength. And according to the wiki, we know which boss drops each specific ring. The Whisperer is set to drop the Bellator ring. The Duke is set to drop the Magus ring. The Leviathan is set to drop the Venator ring, and then finally Vardorvis is set to drop the Altor ring. And this itself is a little more of speculation, but if the Old School team continues with the same path that we've kind of been on for a few years now running, bosses have been dropping the uniques that are in turn the most effective when used against them specifically. So if you think of things like the Twisted Bow being best in slot in Chambers, the Scythe in TOB, and then the Shadow in TOA. If we consider the same kind of concept here, the Whisperer dropping the upgrade to the Warrior Ring would be a slash weakness boss. The Duke dropping the Magic Ring would mean it would be weak to magic of some sort. The Leviathan and the upgraded Archer ring would be weak to range, and then finally Vardorvis and dropping the upgraded Berserker ring would be weak to melee of some sort. Obviously, there is a little bit of speculation in that regard, but it wouldn't be surprising if that was the case nonetheless. Moving on though, there was recently a slight change to how the rings were going to be dropped and made tradable. The rings themselves will be dropped in untradeable icons. The quest bosses will also drop the bars that will be needed to be made in the process. Those bars will be tradable, but you will need one of the icons, one of the rings prior, along with one of the new tradable bars, in order to make the rings themselves. Making them will require 90 magic and 80 crafting, both of which are boostable, and the final product of the ring will be tradable. So the icons themselves that are dropped by the bosses will not be tradable, but once you make the ring into the final product with those stats, you will be able to trade them on the Grand Exchange. It is important to note though that you will not be able to use these rings until you have completed Desert Treasure 2. So if you plan on just sniping one off the Grand Exchange for 200 mil, that is not the case because you will have to complete the quest in order to equip it. But moving on for rewards, we have the Virtus Robes, which are now essentially going to be a stepping stone between Arams and Ancestral, packing a 1% buff to magic damage across the board per piece, but a 4% buff when using Ancient Magics. All three pieces of the Virtus set are dropped whole and tradable, and they do not require the quest completion in order to equip them. Each of the bosses has a chance to drop any of the three pieces, so if you enjoy one boss more than the others, or you're camping out for one specific ring upgrade, you have the ability to get all three of the Virtus pieces from just that specific boss. Next up, we have the Soul Reaper Axe. And when it comes to the Soul Reaper Axe, nothing has really recently changed when it comes to its mechanics. It's going to be a two-handed weapon that's just going to hit incredibly hard with the new stack system. I won't go into too much detail because I know it's been covered in plenty of other videos at this point, but essentially the way it works is with each stack you'll take 8 damage and get a 6% buff to your strength level, and you have the ability to stack up to 5 times, meaning you'll take away 40 HP for a 30% strength boost. And then the Soul Reaper does have a special attack, and it kind of just reverses the effects of your stacks. The special attack will consume all of the stacks that you currently had, and then deal one attack with a 6% bonus of accuracy and strength per stack, and then it will also heal the 8 hit points per stack that you originally took. But apart from its mechanic, the new information to note about the Soul Reaper Axe is it will drop in 4 different untradable pieces. Each boss will drop one specific untradable part, so in order to get the Soul Reaper Axe, you will have to complete all 4 of the bosses and get all 4 of the untradable pieces, similar to how the Abyssal Bludgeon works. Once you combine all 4 untradable pieces, the axe itself is tradable, but it does require completion of the quest in order to use it. And then for our final reward, we have the Ancient Scepter upgrades. Similar to the Ancient Scepter itself, all 4 of these upgrades will be untradable drops, and they will be dropped by the respective boss that they are related to. So the Blood Gem boss will drop the Blood Scepter upgrade. And one important thing I do want to note about these scepters is that Mod Arcane did say that this process is irreversible. So if you do want all 4 of the new scepter upgrades, you will have to get 4 different ancient icons from the Muspa. Each upgrade does just buff the specific style of scepter you're using. So the Blood Scepter, Blood Magic will be able to heal you 10% over your hit points. For the Ice Ancient Scepter, Ice Magic gains a 10% accuracy on unfrozen freezable targets. For the Shadow Scepter, Shadow spells will drain strength and defense in addition to just the target's attack level. And then finally for the Smoke Scepter, Smoke spells reduce healing received by 20% for 10 cycles on hit if the target is poisoned. These upgraded Ancient Scepters will still require the 60 strength and 50 attack to equip, but with a buffed 75 magic requirement. But for the final thing we're going to touch on in this video that you need to know, we have Awakened bosses. And when it comes to the new Awakened bosses, they're classifying them as aspirational content, meaning they want them to be in the same difficulty class as something like the Inferno or getting the Fang upgrade at TOA. I do want to note the Awakened bosses will not be available on release day, but in order to access them, you will need Awakener's Orbs, which are a tradable drop from the regular form, and these will be dropping on day of release. So technically you could stack up some of these orbs, so whenever the bosses do release, you can just go straight in and start taking them on. but the Awakened bosses themselves will not be available on release. Mod Arcane said they might end up adjusting the drop rate on the fly, but they are hoping for the Awakener's Orbs to drop about 1 per hour. So if you are an Iron Man, you could expect to get roughly 1 attempt at an Awakened boss per hour of completing the original. When the Awakened bosses are releases, the orb will be consumed per single attempt at an encounter, meaning if you do have 3 orbs, you are guaranteed 3 encounters, whether you complete the kill or not. So even if you fail to complete the Awakened encounter, you do not receive your orb back. And if you're asking yourself, what's the point of completing the Awakened encounters? Enter Blood Torva, a cosmetic upgrade to Torva that has been a heavily desired update to the game. And in order to get it, you would have to get 1 kill count at all 4 of the Awakened bosses, and upon that completion, you would receive a kit that would allow you to recolor all 3 pieces of your Torva. But with that, that is everything we know and you need to know about Desert Treasure 2 before release. As a last bit of bonus information, if you made it this far in the video, there is some speculation about some of the bosses and their potential weaknesses. Going off of old school and RS3 lore, there are some demonic ties to Duke Sicellus, and with him being the magic boss, there is some potential for a brand new look and a brand new use for the Arceus spellbook, not to mention potentially being able to get a buff from a demon task. And then there's also some speculation revolving the Leviathan and him being a worm-like sea creature similar to the worms we currently have in-game. And if you have done any of those worm tasks, you do know they're weak to Dragonbane weaponry. So potentially with him being the range boss, a Dragon Hunter crossbow being the best in slot. At the end of the day, nobody truly knows, but there is definitely some potential behind those speculations. Either way, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and found it helpful, and if you did, consider dropping it a like, and if you're around here often and not already, hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys on the release of Desert Treasure 2.